Okay, this is our presentation here on the follow-up to Xcode and SQLite, just to ensure that you understand why the types of methods were created and why they were set the way they were set. Now, in the getInitialData or checkDataExists method, that's a class method, meaning that we simply run the method from the class. In doing so, data isn't modified. We just fetch the information from SQLite, or we look at the information and see if a piece of data is there. So nothing is changing data here. Data isn't modified. And then, of course, we're going to add data to the array. Obviously, whatever we find here, we'll populate it in an array and place it in our table view. Same thing here. We'll check to see if the data exists. If it does, we'll put it into our array, and then we'll compare it against what we're looking for. And in the case is we count the amount of items we find. We'll find one, that's 1, or we don't find any, that's 0. And then, of course, no objects are created, meaning that we're not creating an object of the class because we don't need to access an instance of the class. However, this being said, in the actual code here or here in Xcode, we do create objects, and then we take the information and we add them to an array. But that is done only at the level of fetching information. It isn't an object of this class per se. And so when we come here to adding data or deleting data, this now becomes what we call an instance method, meaning that we create an instance of the actual class. So if our class is a list class, we create a list object, and then from there we then run the method. So data in this case is in fact modified, whether we're adding data or deleting data. And in the case of adding data, let's say when we bind, which is what we have to do in in Xcode, the SQLite code is binding data. When we do that, we bind to the item we're adding. So in the case of a list, we bind to the name, or in the case of a category, the name, while when we delete data, we only have to bind to the primary key. So let's say it's the list ID or the category ID. And then finally, of course, we have to create the object in order to run the method. So the difference here is one set of methods simply fetches or checks information. The other methods modify information. So when we get to actually updating information, where do you think that's going to fall? Here or here? Well, if we update information, we're changing it. It's obviously an instance method, and therefore these items would come into play. So when we come back with our web view, our web table view, I should say, project, we're going to we finished deleting information. What we're going to do is we're going to then hook up the items in the table and trigger the actual web to display the web pages. And I hope this helps to understand the difference between a class method and an instance method and how they work here in the blue. The blue is your Xcode, the teal is your methods, and the red is the criteria. This is how you'll follow most any kind of class or instance method in any kind of Xcode that you write. When you modify something, it's generally an instance of the class, and then when you simply perform an action, that's a class method. And so whenever we had to run the class method, we would simply access the class and its method, where here we create the object and then access the method, because the method is only a method of an instance of the object, or I should say the class. And so hope that helps you, and as I said, when we come back we will tie up the remainder of our web table view project. So take care.